Well, good afternoon, everybody. I am Dr. Mike Bowie. I'm National Executive Director of Strengthening the Black Church, and I'm so glad you have tuned into our monthly Lunch and Learn webinar. If this is your first time, I want to say welcome in. And if you are a returning person, we want to say welcome back. Every month, we try to provide leadership principles, whether it's self-care. Last month, we did some on security and the church. So we have a lot of plethora of things happening on the webinar. And today we have an exciting topic talking about year-end giving. As I think about year-end giving, it reminds me of me being in the local church. And matter of fact, speaking of the local church, where are you today? Let us know where you're checking us out from, what city, what church, where you're from. We're so glad you're with us today. And some of you all know, like 20 plus years, I was in a local church. And this time of year, I would have a certain anxiety and just some type of uneasiness about charge conference or year-end giving. So today we have an expert who's going to help us give some practical tools and principles to talk about year-end giving. So once again, I want to thank you all for being here today and let us know where you're from. Put it in the chat. We got Nashville. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in today. So as we move forward today, we have a lot of principles and practices going to help you with your year-end giving strategy. Today we have the Reverend Dr. Ken Sloane, who's the Director and Stewardship Generosity of Discipleship Ministries. Ken is an elder in the New Jersey Annual Conference. He's been in a local church for over 20 years, so he knows what you're going through right now. He understands what happens in local church. He has been on the ground, so he knows what you're going through. Ken, he's married. He has 4 grown children, and he has done several things throughout our connection. He did things with communications at UMCOM. Ken also has provided certain insight and given certain principles on how to create connectional giving and generosity and content for online courses for discipleship ministries. You can check that out. But today I want you all to know that we're blessed to have Ken Sloane in the house. And I want you all to just put your hands together to receive the Ken Sloane. Hey, Ken, take it away, my friend.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Bowie. It is great to be here today. I'm really happy. It's a topic that I get really excited about talking about. Yeah. And so I hope that it's helpful. And as I get started, I'm going to throw my slides up now and kind of go along with those. But as I get excited, I will share with you in some ways that, and Dr. Bowie and I were talking about this before we started, but I really kind of bristle at the word about being an expert because you really are the experts of what's going on in your local church. And I think that's pretty important. And we'll touch on that in a number of places because so much of what we do in ministry is contextual. And it depends on where you are and where your people are in terms of what kind of ideas will catch and kind of get some traction and which may not be the best ideas to instill. And I don't know what those are, but you will hopefully. And so I put this slide up just so that you know how to get a hold of me and how to get more information. My email address is there at the bottom of the screen, and I'm at UMC Discipleship. I'm on Facebook. We have a UMC Stewardship page on Facebook, and we've got a great web page where we put resources up on a regular basis. And there's all kinds of things that are there that you can check out as well. And through the presentation, I know that you've received a PDF copy of some handouts of my slides. And in that PDF, I've included some links to content that relates to each of the points that I'm going to be making on this. So if you haven't had a chance to open it up, you might want to open it up, or you can open it up later, but you will have those links to follow up on if there's any of these ideas that are particularly you want to delve into more. And like I say, for today, I'm just going to lift up 12 ideas. These are not creations out of my mind. Oftentimes, these have come from my experiences working with other churches, talking to pastors, talking to lay leaders in finance. Sometimes through my travels in churches where I've been, I've gotten these ideas. And so I put them forward. And again, I'll say that not all 12 of these ideas are going to fit into your schedule between now and the end of the year. But if 1 or 2 of them sound like they might be able to be good in your particular setting, I hope that you'll kind of grab onto them and maybe dig a little deeper and see what you can find out. And if you need to reach out to me again, I invite you to use that email address to reach out to me. I say this in just about every webinar that I do, that you are the context expert for your local church. And that's an important context for this. So you will know where your folks are at, what kind of traditions they may be strongly tied to, what kind of things are they open to changing. One of the things that I've kind of learned over the last couple of years is that the pandemic kind of forced us into a situation where a lot of congregations had to accept some change as we dealt with the pandemic and the restrictions that were upon us. And I personally was amazed and dazzled by the creativity that I saw churches doing, and the people gave me feedback of how they were handling the limitations of the pandemic. And so I really believe that there's a capacity there for change, and that the pandemic gave us kind of a reason to look at that possibility. And so I hope hopefully some of these ideas will have that kind of power for you. What I lift up as my first idea is actually an idea for something that I've been kind of promoting since I came into this position almost 13 years ago now. And that is that I like to see churches, if possible, move to a year-round strategy. Um, for many years, churches were just kind of stuck in stewardship, being confined to the boundaries of a campaign and to the boundaries of a certain season and a certain month, maybe, or even a certain week that became the tradition of the time when you talked about stewardship. And then we tended to kind of pack it up and put it away. And what I really want to see churches do is develop more of a year-round strategy. And I'm not talking about, preaching a stewardship message every Sunday. I'm talking about weaving into the life and the fabric of your church the ideas of stewardship. So when it comes time to do a campaign, there's not that feeling of, okay, we've got to say this now once and then we can put it all away again. And there's also not that resistance of saying, okay, this is where they're going to come on strong. But we as congregations are prepared because we've been talking about stewardship in a lot of different settings. I think one of the things that has a lot of power is when we as a church are bold enough to talk about money at a time when we're not asking people to give, because we believe that Jesus preached more about money and possessions than almost any other topic in the Gospels, short of maybe the kingdom of God. And if we want to just be the kind of teachers that Jesus was, then we need to talk about money and how it can impact on people's lives. But I think it has even more credibility when we do it at a time that's not connected to pledge cards or estimated giving cards or campaigns or things like that. And that we really say we want to help people live more full, more Christian, be more faithful in their discipleship. And to have that blessing, the blessings that come from that faithful discipleship and generosity, we want folks to have that. And it's not just about funding the church's budget. And so again, all these are ideas of places where that can weave into our lives. And I think now especially that, all of us, pretty much all of us are carrying around in our pockets, not only a camera on our phone, but a video camera. And so there's a lot of different ways we can use that as we see things happening in the church to kind of let people know what's going on. And of course, worship is still a wonderful time to have stewardship as developed as a theme, and to expand into areas like our personal use of money, but also things like how are we being stewards of God's creation? That's a topic that many people in our churches are wondering why we're not speaking more to, about what's all that's going on with climate. And remember that things that have been a traditional part of our church, like people's personal testimonies, still have a lot of power and don't need to be saved just for a season in the fall when we might do a campaign, but they can be woven into a year-round strategy. And I'm also want to remind you that I'm not saying that campaigns are not a good part of that overall plan, because I think being intentional about having a time when your finance people can get an idea of where their finances are going to be in the coming year can be a particularly important part as well. So again, these are just this is my first thing, is to say really build into that idea of a year-round strategy. Secondly is very important, and hopefully it's not a big leap for a lot of churches anymore, but the idea of expanding and digital giving and embracing digital giving, if you haven't yet, is just a great way to go. We are moving in a culture away from things like checks. I have a report written by the Federal Reserve. I got it a few years ago that I've been talking about for the last 10 years, probably, saying the checks were going to go away by 2026. And back then that sounded like far away, but it doesn't sound very far away anymore. Now, I don't know if that date is still what they're projecting or not, but every year people are writing 1.8 billion fewer checks. So we know that checks are going away. We know that more and more people are not carrying cash around with them. And so we need to look at what the digital aspects are of money now, and people's ability to give through digital platforms. Um, the question really comes down to, how do we make it easier for our people to give? It doesn't necessarily mean shutting off one avenue that we've used before, or telling people we're not taking checks or we're not taking cash anymore. But the question is, how many ways can we make it easier and give people more options? And again, many of these you're aware of: electronic funds transfer, having a place on your website where people can go up and give, using an app. A lot of churches are using an app, using text to give. Um, I was in England, in London mainly, a few weeks ago, end of August, excuse me, end of July, beginning of August. And one of the things that amazed me as we wandered around London was that everywhere we went, people accepted payment through tapping to give, taking my phone and tapping it on a little device they would hold. Every restaurant that we ate in, every store that we went and bought something in, even the street vendors on the street would have these little devices. And in that culture in the UK, they didn't want to handle our credit card or our phone, but they were very happy to hold the device up and let us hold our card or hold our phone and tap it. All of the subways that we rode, the tubes in London, the buses, all had that ability to tap to give. And what I found myself looking for is, in every church that we visited, whether it was the cathedrals or the little British Methodist church that we worshiped in one Sunday morning, had a place in the church for people to use their phone and just tap something and give. And so I say that to you, say it hasn't, I don't see that as much in the US right now, but I think that's the next thing that's coming. And more, we're doing that in stores where we're tapping a credit card, or we don't have to insert a credit card or hand it to anybody. I think this is the next place we're going to go. And so as we went to all these beautiful cathedrals and churches, and everybody's taking pictures of the stained glass window, there's Ken, the stewardship nerd, and I'm taking pictures of all these places where people have these machines to tap to give. And so I think that's one of the things that's coming and that we need to embrace. The other thing to think about in terms of your church and the way people give, if you have people who give in this way, who text to give or who give electronically, is to think about more opportunities to give. And especially, I kind of like the idea of these ideas of quick, small gifts when the church is in the midst of something, and you put something out in social media, on Facebook or wherever, and invite people to make a small gift to support it. We're in a season right now. If you're going through what I'm going through with my phone and text messages, I'm getting about 13 to 15 text messages a day asking me to give to one of the candidates or one of the parties. And what they're asking for, their ask is always a small amount. You find out once you click on and you think about it, they have the opportunity for you to give more, but they always kind of pull you in by giving a small amount. And I think that idea can be applied when your church is involved on a project in the community, or your youth group is doing something at somebody's home, and somebody posts on Facebook, here's our youth raking leaves for some of our folks in the older folks in the community. Would you be willing to show your support for them by making a gift of $5 that would help them underwrite the retreat that they're going to be taking in the winter to go skiing? So those kind of things. So consider how this new electronic giving gives us an opportunity to move into some things like that. My third one is really one that's not necessarily limited to the last quarter of the church year, but throughout the year. And more folks, what we want to do is we want to promote our mission, how we're achieving our mission, front and center in whatever we do. And especially in this end of the year, when people, I think, are more inclined to be moved to that kind of generosity when they're thinking about Thanksgiving, when they're thinking about Christmas. This is a great time to tell the stories of how your church is making an impact on people's lives. Definitely do this. I recommend all churches do quarterly giving statements. I'm surprised oftentimes when I do my webinars and I ask people how many people do it annually and how many people do it quarterly. There's so many people who only do it once a year, and it's only done after the year ends. because that's when they're required by the IRS to acknowledge people's giving. And you miss this great opportunity, not just to give people a report of their giving, but to give them a report of the impact of their giving. And on top of that, to express some appreciation and gratitude for their giving. Your quarterly statements are the best opportunity to do that. And I learned this lesson, how to reinforce me by a good friend, Melvin Amerson, who is part of the Texas Methodist Foundation and is a leader in stewardship, has been kind of a mentor to me. When I wrote a course, one of my most recent courses on financial ethics, I quoted Melvin from one of his great books, which is Stewardship in the African American Tradition. And I recommend it to people to read it, regardless of whether they're serving in the Black church or they're serving in another setting, that there's so many great ideas in there. And Melvin gives a powerful statement about how important these quarterly statements are as a way to celebrate impact and to thank people and to do those kind of things. I believe in them so much that I think it's important to do 5 of them. And I call the extra one my 3.5 statement. That means somewhere between when your October statement goes out that covers the first 3 quarters, but before the year is over, when your 4th one is going to come out, so maybe like in the, somewhere in the late part of November or whatever, to send another opportunity out to folks. It reminds them of where they are in terms of achieving the giving plan that they had set in place. But it also is another opportunity to put in one of those impact stories in that thank you, which is what people are wanting to hear in this time. So I really recommend it. What can you celebrate? All these things are great. Your Sunday school, your youth, your VBS, your backpack programs, things like that, if you have them. In the church my wife and I attend, they wrote me into doing the stewardship work there. They didn't have a stewardship committee, so I'm the stewardship committee now. And for the quarterly statements, I write up a little brief, little third of a page to go in those statements that talks about something good that's going on. In this past summer, just a couple of weeks, 2 weeks ago, we baptized a member of the youth group who had never been baptized, wanted to be baptized by immersion, did it out on the church lawn where people could see us. And I got some couple of great pictures from that. And that's going to be the statement. It's just going to go in and say, people, hey, because you gave, we changed this life. This young man has heard the call to discipleship and has not only taken baptism, but become a full member of the church and part of our work to do disciple making. Use a variety of voices in media. Again, you can use videos, you can use inserts, things like that. If you do it through announcements in church, use different people, different voices, so it's not just coming from one voice and all the time. These 3 words are important, and I got these from Ken Callahan, who wrote, I think, a book, probably is 40 years old now, called 12 Keys to an Effective Church. But I heard him in a workshop, and he said, words like duty and obligation and commitment are kind of on their way out with the generations that are coming up now. But the words that get traction are words like hope, compassion, and community. And I think those are important when we do our any kind of messaging. And this is just a quick plug for a course that's online now that I host called Developing a Narrative Budget. And it's an online course which can help you develop a narrative budget, but it also is there to reinforce this way of thinking about what are our stories of impact and how can we kind of get those out before our people more. So those are the first 3, and I'll just kind of give you a minute to kind of take a breath, and I'll move into my next group, which really is about what I've highlighted already, but the importance of thank you and saying thank you to our folks. And I suggest this as simply upping the thank you game, because I've talked with folks at churches who said, well, our people give because they're a commitment to Christ. They don't expect a thank you. And I say, that's wonderful if they don't expect a thank you. That makes a thank you even more special when it comes in an unexpected way. And so I try, and everything that I suggest to folks sending out or in the work what I'm doing with my church is I praise people for their generosity in a very general way. If your church is struggling and you're kind of behind a little bit in your giving, you want to lift that up to people, but you also want to praise their generosity that's brought you to this place where your church is still alive and still has the energy to try and work to make that goal. So make sure that you praise their generosity in that. and again, celebrate what's been done, as I was said earlier. This is, I think, is a great formula for effective stewardship in a local church. In fact, it's the title of a book that I've loved that's been around for a while. Chick Lane, who was at Luther Seminary, wrote a book and simply called it Ask, Thank, Tell. And those are the key components of strong stewardship. You have to thank people. You have to tell them what kind of impact they're making. And you have to be bold enough to ask people to give in a way that's going to make a difference. And I remind folks oftentimes that that what makes an effective ask is an effective listener. If you can listen to people who are your donors and you can find out what things in the church excite them, then you're asking people to give to something or to give to a particular ministry becomes so much stronger. I've done a couple of training events with Nonprofit World where I was one of in participants. And I'm always amazed when I work side by side with people in the nonprofit world, how much emphasis they put on these thank yous. And oftentimes they'll talk about 7 touches, that every person who donates should get 7 touches, whether it's a phone call or a text thanking them or a card or a little note at the bottom of a statement or a receipt, a little handwritten thing or a newsletter. They should be thanked in 7 different ways. And I think that's a wonderful goal for us to start working towards. And if you want a place to start, I'd say thank yous to your core leaders. And not necessarily, somebody asked me recently, said, do we really have to know what everybody gives? And I said, no, you don't have to know. I mean, you know who your committed people are in your church. And it's great to start a practice of starting in that tight circle in the center and then moving it out and finding ways to thank people outside. But again, I posted these mailboxes because I think we've come to that point where, and I'll say this for myself, I get so much junk mail in my mailbox that I just simply carry it home, carry it into the house and throw it away. But when I get a letter or something that's hand addressed to me, it's like a holy thing. I kind of come in and Bridget and I have a joke and I say, we got a real card. I said, whose turn is it to open this? It's like a big treat. So don't overlook the power that, a snail mail letter or a handwritten note can have in these days when we're sometimes bombarded with a lot of mail that just goes right in the garbage. Remembering your saints, this is one of the opportunities, I think, where we could really, in many churches, we could kind of find a way to connect with a very emotional time in the church. This is the first Sunday in November, is All Saints Day. In a lot of churches, maybe in your church, it's a time to recognize memorial gifts that have come in. And again, I think that's a great way to keep the idea of memorial giving before people. That can make a big difference in the life of your church. It's an opportunity sometimes to recognize people who are not necessarily parts of our cloud of witnesses in heaven, not those saints, but some of the saints that are in our midst. And again, this is one that's a contextual kind of thing. You don't want to start, pulling people out like a popularity contest. But if you've got folks who have been working in your church for 30 or 40 years or whatever, and you can track that kind of information, what a great way to celebrate people, to celebrate those folks who are kind of in saints in training. And again, you have to kind of do it in your own context. Celebrate the contributions that people make on All Saints Day. Celebrate the faithfulness of the people who have gone before, but also it could be a time to celebrate those folks who have, over the years have been there for the church. And again, you want to do it carefully so you don't leave people out or hurt anybody's feelings. But the other thing to stress is that you don't always have to give gifts as memorials when people die. We can honor somebody while they're still alive by giving a gift in their honor. And I'm going to talk a little more about this for one of my later points. But in a lot of ways, those kind of gifts are an experience for people to be honored in that way. And it's a wonderful thing for people who already have enough stuff in their lives. In fact, a lot of our people in our churches at the age that we are, and I count myself in that group, we're getting to the point where we have to start getting rid of some of our stuff, and we don't really necessarily need a lot of tangible physical things, but honoring somebody with a gift can be a great way to do that. One of the churches I heard about that was doing this gave people the opportunity to make a $20 gift in honor of a Sunday school teacher who had been influential in their lives. And they would do it in the same way that you might put flowers on the altar. they did this in that way for folks, so they would list them in the bulletin. And these are the folks that we wanted to celebrate with who gave a gift in honor of an influential Sunday school teacher. And it could be an amount. I think in their case, they said $20 would cover the Sunday school curriculum for one student. And so that's how they kind of came up with an amount. But you could do it with, scholarships for community children to come to VBS or something like that. But again, a way to remind people that here's a way to give a gift and honor somebody. And it's not going to be something they have to find a place for in their lives. It's going to be the experience of knowing that that child or whoever got to go to that experience, whether it be a Bible school or a Sunday school or a youth event or something. So make sure that your All Saints Day is filled with celebration and thankfulness. It shouldn't be a day necessarily of mourning people we've lost, but of celebrating their lives in faith. And again, I mentioned Melvin Amerson before. He was on my webinar a couple of days ago and sent a link that I'm going to ask them to put in the chat that's not in your handouts, but it's some great resources from the Louisiana Foundation around resources you can use on All Saints Day to kind of get people focused in that way. And it even includes things like planned giving, like, remembering the church in your estate and things like that as well. And you can find some great resources there. And again, I'm so grateful for Melvin's been not only my mentor, but a great supporter. And he signs up for my webinars, and when I see his name there, I think, well, Melvin, you could teach this, whatever. But he just does it to support me, which I can't thank him enough for that. Number 6 is, I think this is one that's got some possibilities for us, and that is, I think the idea of reconnecting with a wider family than just the people who are sitting in your pews can have some potential for us. We have people who move around a lot, and we have folks probably in your church who have moved away who really gave themselves to your church when they were there, were really committed and all that. And they go away, and we do hope that they reunite with a congregation that's closer to them, that they can give them the support or whatever, but part of their hearts still belong to your church. And so, if you can find ways to connect with people who have drifted away or children who have drifted away, I have the link that's in your handouts for this particular one is a story that I wrote, an article, a true story, about returning to the church where I grew up. It's up in New York, and walking into worship one Sunday morning. It's a church where my parents were active up until the day they died, and where their funerals were held, which has been a few years now. And what it was like as I walked in there and thinking, this church's congregation has shrunk, and I'm thinking, I really could have done something significant. I really should make a significant gift to this church because the impact it's had on my life. And I won't give you the whole article there, but I think when you read it, you'll see some of the things that are important as we work to kind of maintain some kind of connection with people. If you're live streaming your service, it's an opportunity maybe to open it up to a wider audience, to have a special service and reach out to people who are beyond the local area and say, we really want you to attend this particular service because we're going to celebrate folks who have been a part of this church in that way. You can reach out to your Facebook friends of the church. You may have some people who are following you on Facebook, your church, but are not necessarily connected to the church. And again, to reach out. Some of your churches may do a homecoming Sunday. I know I've experienced that in some of my more rural churches that I visited. And what a big deal it was to invite people to come back, to invite kids in college to make sure they were there for that Sunday, to invite people to come back. And again, if you're streaming your services, you can have a real wide impact with that. And it's a great opportunity to say, hey, we're going to ask for a special gift because we have some special needs here in the church as we're coming to the end of the year. If you're able to give, if you're able to continue the kind of generosity that you had with us when you were with us, we would really appreciate that. But we just want to have you with us. We just appreciate all you've done in the past. Again, always reminding people how thankful you are for their generosity. And then, especially in this last quarter, it's a time to connect with ministries that might be in your church and saying, hey, we're doing services on Thanksgiving Eve, on Christmas Eve. There's going to be a lot of people there. It's going to be a very simple, thankful service. We just want to know if any of your folks in these groups are looking for a place to go, that they'll find a welcome here and be accepted here in our church. And I add on that the idea of many churches doing a Blue Christmas service specifically geared towards people who are grieving the loss of someone, and they feel having a hard time getting into all the happy experience of the holiday. And so that's an important one for them as well. And so again, I think it's a great opportunity to extend that invitation wider. I used to find that when we started doing the Blue Christmas service, I notified all the funeral directors in the community and say, you know of people who are really still grieving the loss of their loved ones, because you follow up with them in those kind of ways. Just mention to them they're welcome to come to a Blue Christmas service, that we're really opening up to the community. And even people in your neighborhood who are somehow touched by the presence of your church, who feel good that they have a church there in their community. Again, think of ways you can reconnect with them during these last months. Giving Tuesday is one that really is kind of amazing to me. It really hasn't been around all that long, but it was an answer to, all this money that flowed out of us on Black Friday and Black Saturday, and then right before Thanksgiving, and then we had Cyber Monday, which gave all the online folks a chance to get money out of us. And then someone said, how about a Giving Tuesday, the following day? And so it's the Tuesday after Thanksgiving. And in 2023, Giving Tuesday stats were pretty amazing. 100 countries are involved now. In the US alone, 34 million adults participated in Giving Tuesday. $3.1 billion was raised just in the US in 2023. And the Giving Tuesday idea is only 12 years old. The way I kind of got tuned into this was I was sitting at a meal inside a local church. And I can't remember, was it an annual conference or whether it was just a place I was visiting and at some point. But I was sitting at a table with a guy who was talking about how their church, their whole community celebrated Giving Tuesday. And the church had a booth in there, and all the different organizations around the community had a booth in there. And it was a great time. And they had folks who came and did music during the day, and they had kids coming, and they had, food wagons, and it was just a big community kind of celebration. And so it doesn't have to be just your church and just your members. It might be something that, there are other groups in the community that are doing, and you just kind of want to coordinate your giving. So it's just something to think about. And again, you can find all this information on givingtuesday.org if you want to observe it. And I think, like I say, when it first started, I think UMCOR was the first on board, the first organization I knew that had a United Methodist connection that connected with Giving Tuesday, and they had a great job with it. But it's grown, and now a lot of organizations are using it. But it might be an opportunity to connect people in your church. Scheduling a miracle. This is everybody wants a miracle, and I use this slide to talk about what you may be familiar with as Miracle Sunday, or maybe in your local church, maybe you've done a tithing Sunday. Again, in a lot of churches where people have not kind of taken the step to tithing, a tithing Sunday is one Sunday where we ask everybody just to tithe a week of their income, and to see how it feels to be able to give a gift like that, just to try it for one Sunday, to take it for a test drive. Miracle Sunday is just when you have a goal and you want people to say, hey, we want a challenge. We're going to make one Sunday and we're going to ask everybody to give above and beyond to reach a particular goal. I consulted with a church a few years back that they were seeing early in the year that they were kind of behind. And what they were nervous about, they had been a church that paid 100% of their apportionments. They took great pride in that. But they were concerned that if they didn't do something to raise some extra money, that they were going to fall short on paying 100% of their apportionments. And so I went in and talked with them, and I talked about this idea of a Miracle Sunday, or a kind of a tithing Sunday. And we talked about that, and they said, well, maybe we could do a month in the summer. It'd be kind of a fun focus in the summer, and we could talk about all these different things that the apportionments do and around the world. And I said, that's a great idea. And I said, another way to kind of give a little push to this is and they needed to raise about $50,000 to kind of bring themselves up to speed. It's a pretty decent sized church. And so I said, it's just asking, because I don't know really anything about your members and their giving. I said, is there anybody in the church who would be able to do a matching gift of like $25,000 and that the congregation could try to raise the money to match that. And the finance committee chair looked at me and he said, I don't know if there's anybody. I mean, maybe there are, but I don't know that I feel comfortable asking anybody to do that to make a, because usually they were kind of their best givers and all that. And I said, okay, well, let me ask you another question, just hypothetically. Are there 25 families that you could ask to give $1,000 to make this happen? And his eyes lit up and he said, oh gosh, yeah, I could find 25 families that each give $1,000. And so they had 25 families that put up the matching gift to come together. And they didn't have to say how many, how many people they said, we've got a group of families that are going to match everything the church can raise on that particular Sunday up to $25,000. They'll match. And so we'll have our $50,000. And they went way over their total. They got their gifts from the folks who wanted to be part of that, that matching group. And then people were just so spurred by the fact that their giving would be doubled in that way that it worked out well. So again, think of a project, think of a reason. Again, being real bland about what the cause is, just saying this is going to help us meet the budget, sometimes isn't enough motivation for folks. Folks really aren't all that interested in meeting our budget. I think they're more interested in what we're going to do or how we're going to move in an area. And sometimes it can be a mission project on and on. Sometimes it can be something that I think generates a lot of excitement across the church, like saying, hey, we want to pay 100%, we want to pay 110% of our Africa University apportionment. Would you be willing to participate? We're going to have a miracle and we're going to raise whatever we have. We're going to put it towards what we want to do to strengthen Africa University because we're just proud of that institution, or our Black College Fund, or whatever might be a particularly appropriate project. Again, 100% apportionments worked in the particular church where I was consulting, but you can find the thing that can motivate your folks a lot. And again, this is in that Christmas and Thanksgiving time when people really are focused in this particular way. They're coming to the end of the year. They're feeling those feelings of gratitude and generosity, and you want to give them a place to connect. My number 9 idea is, again, another one that I experienced from a local church. And it was the way that church celebrated the commitments that people made in the last quarter looking towards the new year. Folks who gave an estimated giving card, or the church would send out estimated giving cards. And then they had, in this particular church, they had put this tree on the wall. And as people got their estimated giving cards in the mail, they had a leaf that was in there, and they would have the opportunity to go and put the leaf on the wall as part of the tree and see the tree fill up. And it's kind of a way of giving people something visual to do and something that actually made them kind of come forward and do it. And the kids love doing it. Kids, they said they try to get as many of the kids to come up and put the leaves on. You can even have youth kind of work on this project in terms of preparing the leaves and cutting them out or putting the tree together or whatever. It's a great way to involve people. It needs to be contextual for your church. I think, like I say, you want to think about what's a way to do this that's going to encourage people to respond. And even in a church where not everybody does an estimate of giving, but you send the estimated giving cards out to everybody. And if somebody doesn't feel comfortable doing an estimate of giving or a pledge card or whatever, you can still find a way for them to check a box and just respond and saying, I can't make an estimate at this time, but I'll do the best I can, and then invite them to put a leaf up in that same kind of context. You might be in a context of a church where people would be comfortable doing this. And you could even do a system where I think in one of the churches, they said they wanted a different color for people who stepped up their commitments. And that's one of the questions, one of the things that comes up a lot of times in churches is that saying, we have people who give, but they've been given at the same level for, 5 or 7 or 10 years. And we need to find ways to encourage them to kind of give up and step up. And so you could use it in a way to say, hey, the leaf's going to represent a commitment to increase your giving by, whatever that amount is. We're not going to set it. Or you could say a goal, our goal is for everybody to step up 3% or 5% or whatever, or more, or something like that. So again, this is one of those things that I can't tell you how to do it, but in your context, you can fill it out. I think that there should be an opportunity for everybody to make a response, and that if somebody feels like they don't can't raise their gift, or they feel like they're not prepared to do an estimate of giving or a pledge card, they're not left out in this process. That you still invite them to come and put a leaf on the tree, and you can decide whether you want people's names on the leaves or you just want to have the leaves fill up, as it shows people that there's a wide commitment in this church to support it. Remember this, please. When someone goes onto your online giving site, your electronic giving site, and they set up a recurring online gift, that's as solid as putting their signature on a pledge card, maybe even more solid, because they're setting it up to automatically continue. And I had somebody who called me one time and said, how do we get more people to do estimates of giving? And I asked him, I said, well, how many people are giving electronically on a recurring basis? And he had a big percent, 40% of their people. And I said, well, do you expect those people to give an estimate of giving card? Well, yeah. I said, well, haven't they already done that online? And it's like, oh, yeah, I guess they have, kind of a thing. So again, remember, if folks have done that online recurring giving, treat it as a pledge. I did have a question on Tuesday night, which is important to look at if you have an online giving platform, is how easy is it for people to increase their giving? And we ran into a little problem with this at the church that I attend, because I went in and wanted to increase my giving in January, and I really couldn't see a good way to do that. And I was nervous that I was going to move up, a good percentage, but I was going to still be paying my previous one and my new one. So make sure that that's kind of working. And sometimes you may need to kind of give people a little instruction about how to do that, which I think is important, whether you do it through an explanation on the page, or you do it in the bulletin, or you do a little video, or somebody talks about it. But again, keep those online recurring gifts in your mind as you do all these. Number 10 is one that I guess is not really central to this particular time, but the offering time is in transition in many places. And with the pandemic, we probably have in many places given up on passing metal plates around. Of course, it wasn't a very good idea during the pandemic. Pandemic really isn't over. It's probably still not a great idea to have everybody handle a metal plate. And so churches are handling that in different ways. But sometimes it almost feels that the moment is there. And I believe that people are kind of, attention is focused on giving in that moment, whether they're doing electronically or whether they're, bringing something up to a plate that's at the back or in the front, or whether they're doing it at the end of the service. But then that moment, people they know this is the offering time, and their attention is on giving. And what I encourage folks to do is not waste that moment, when that's what people are expecting. They want to hear something. And I think a great way to do that is to think about something you can share the church is doing in maybe 1 or 2 minutes, just in that time. In the church that we worship in, they have 5 or 6 plates around the congregation, and they still have an offering time. They invite people to the offering, and then the piano plays a little bit of music. And I count them sometimes. 3 or 4 people will get up and put something in the offering plate, because a lot of people put it in when they come in because they don't want to get up in the middle of the service or whatever. But still, that is the time. That's the offering moment. That golden moment when people are ready to hear something about giving. And so I just encourage people to say, don't lose that moment. And sometimes it's almost a little awkward when people are sitting around because they're used to the whole rigmarole around ushers and plates, and just use it to talk about giving. And if you need places to look for that, email me. I can give you some great places to find little nuggets that you can share during that little bit of time that you have in there. But it's a great way to do it. Again, talking about impact, witness, lives touched, and no better placed time to make a case for generosity. When I say witness, I should also mention to you, and I talked about personal testimonies. If you want to use that time to have people kind of give a little witness of their own, my suggestion is that you make it a video, and this way you can kind of trim it so it doesn't go too long. You may have somebody who gets up and you want to do their tribute, break it up into 3 different weeks worth of testimony, but you don't want it to go on and on and on with someone. So that's my idea for that. But there's no better time in your worship service, I think, to make a case for generosity. And then I remind people in that offering moment, speak to your virtual audience as well, and make sure that they're invited to participate and feel like they are not just, eavesdropping on your service, but they're an important part of it as well. And I'm in the home stretch now, so I'm going to give you the last 2. to offer a different kind of gift giving. And Mike Slaughter, who was the pastor of the Ginghamsburg United Methodist Church in Ohio for probably 35 years, I believe, just recently retired in the last few years. But he was the one who kind of lifted this up for the denomination, wrote a book about it, about realizing that this is not your birthday. We spend a lot of money on ourselves, meaning ourselves and our families and all that stuff, and those folks close to us. But it's not your birthday, it's Jesus's birthday. And is a point that he made in the book. And the way he lived that out in his local church was that one year he got up and I'm sure he sweated this out, but he invited his folks to say, you know what? This is not your birthday. This is Jesus' birthday. What would Jesus want from us for his birthday? And his suggestion was, I want to challenge you to take whatever amount you're going to spend on Christmas gifts for your family and give an equal amount to mission. And when I heard that, I was like, oh my gosh, really? And I thought, I don't know, that's treading on some pretty sacred ground. But what he challenged people to do is to give to a mission work they were doing in Sudan. And he said, I had some people who really cried over it. I had some people who thought that got mad at me over it. But he said, when we did it, it was amazing. And how people were creative and explained why their gifts were a little less than what they were before and how much it meant to them. Well, I'm not encouraging anybody to do that. And whether that's a hill that you could climb or a hill that you would die on. But let me say this as one who is getting into my senior years and senior discounts, is that a lot of our folks don't need anything. I don't need more scarves. I don't need more hats. I don't need more flannel shirts. I don't need anything. And so my wife and I have talked about how can we do more experiences and more stuff that we have to find space for. And again, I think people are looking to what might be an alternative to more stuff. And if you get a group of people down to kind of think about this in your church or whatever, what would be something that would be appropriate for somebody to make a donation and have something that they could give as a gift that symbolized somebody who was really being helped? What is it in your church's mission that could be a gift of love? We would, in the church that I was involved in, that I started, my last church was a church plant. We did this right in the very beginning with Valentine's Day. And we said, instead of people giving flowers and candy to their Valentines, we were going to invite folks to give, I think it was $5 at the time, to get a blanket for church world service for people who have gone through floods and disasters. And what we did is we got an old wool blanket at the thrift store and we cut it up little hearts and we made cards for people to give people saying, in honor of how much I love you, or something along that line, I've given this money to provide a blanket to surround someone with love in a time of a disaster. Well, again, that was something that we had to make that and look in a way so that people would feel good giving it to somebody they cared about. You could think about that, and especially at this time, what are the things that people could make a gift of? And I think it's important that that you think of something that you can provide to the person to give that actually is attractive and is going to be something that the people will say, wow, that was great. I want to hold on to this. A couple of churches I know have done this with little Christmas tree ornaments. And they've asked their people to make a gift. There's somebody here who doesn't necessarily want a gift or whatever, but here you can give them this little ornament as a token of the fact that you cared about them and made this gift. And the last one is just real easy, and that is they invite your folks to think beyond the Sunday offering when it comes to the end of the year. We have provided for you, the link is in your handouts, a couple of beautifully designed bulletin inserts from our graphic designer here at Discipleship Ministries. And one is about all the different advantages for people to make year-end gifts of things like stock and bonds, which oftentimes for folks have accumulated in value to the point where they have to pay a lot of tax on that. If they sell that, they have to pay the tax if they wanted to give it to the church, but they can give it directly to the church and not pay any tax on it and have the benefit of making that donation. And so, again, this is all laid out in the year end is the time for giving brochure. and it's a great way to do it. And people can give all kinds of things. They can give, real estate, an antique, an auto. I've got a whole webinar about this if you want to look it up. People now, Bitcoin is going back up, and people sort of bought it, sort of speculating, but now it's appreciated in value, and they may want to get rid of it, not have to pay all the tax on it. So that could be a possibility as well. Um, Gifts from an IRA. When people get to be about 73 now, all the money they put in an IRA, they're required to start taking it out. It's called required minimum distributions. And when you take it out, you didn't pay tax on it. Usually when you put it in, you've got to pay the tax on it. However, there's a way called a qualified charitable distribution. That's a QCD. And this is all laid out in the bulletin insert, that they can give it directly to the church and not have to pay the tax on it. Now, it doesn't count as a deductible gift anymore, but the reality is about 90% of us can't itemize our donations anyway, because they've raised the level up to almost $30,000 now. So unless you have some folks who are really giving a lot to a lot of places, we don't have as many folks doing that. But it's a great way for folks to give right out of their IRA, to give to the church and make a special gift. It's also some mention there about legacy giving that you can talk with people about, an opportunity to say, hey, you can give, and legacy giving doesn't just include waiting for people to die. It also includes gifts that go beyond your life that you can do, charitable gifts that have continued to provide value to you. The best folks to talk about with this is your United Methodist Foundation, the one that serves your local community. And if you don't know have a connection with the United Methodist Foundation, email me and I will put you in touch with the people you need to know. They can help you with gifts of stocks and bonds and things like that. They deal with that on a regular basis, and some of these other things as well. So anyway, so that's kind of where I'm going to end up with this. I also put in your handouts a link to a great resource from our friends at Horizon Stewardship, who've done a new year-end giving little book to give you some ideas or stuff like that as well. And that's available as a free download, and that link is in your handouts as well. And again, you'll find some more ideas there for year-end giving as well there. So I have talked a lot. I would love to have an opportunity to answer any questions that you might have or that have come up along the way. And it's a lot of time to listen to one old man talk. So anyway, any questions out there?
Wow, Ken, first of all, man, thank you. Thank you for these practical principles and tips on year-end giving and on stewardship. I mean, this being a pastor in a local church for over 20 plus years, man, you brought some stuff back to my remembrance. And Melvin Amerson is a good friend of mine. And Melvin and I, we pastored together in Houston, Texas, in the Texas Annual Conference. Melvin does a great job. And I just thought, one thing you said, and I've had great mentors, and one of my best mentors and spiritual giants in my life was Mike Slaughter. And look, I was there at Ginsburg as a teaching pastor when we did Christmas Is Not Your Birthday. And what he did, for those who know Mike, one Saturday morning, he was getting up, drinking coffee, reading the newspaper, and he saw a 750 BMW sedan. Yeah. And he looked at the next page, it had the Sudan. Starving people. And the Holy Spirit said, which one would you prefer to have? Sudan or the Sudan?
Wow. That's a great story.
And man, it changed my life. And so remember, y'all, Christmas isn't your birthday, it's Jesus' birthday. And man, people got ticked off, but it makes sense. Celebrate your birthday, but on Jesus' birthday, give to the least, the last, and the lost. And that's what matters. So man, I tell you, I'm so glad you had this great presentation. Those, what is the Spirit saying to you all? Any questions that's been brewing? Ken had a powerful presentation. What is any question you want to put in the chat? We can answer a few questions. We have about 6 minutes. So yeah, Ken did a great job. Go ahead.
Or an idea that I didn't cover, because again,
an idea. Yeah.
I try to listen to new things, and maybe next time I do this webinar will be 13 ideas or whatever. So yeah. I steal ideas everywhere I can.
So we have one here. How can we effectively connect year-end giving with our church? Oh, this is awesome. With our church's mission and vision. I'm
Absolutely.
gonna give that to Ken. Go ahead, Ken.
Yeah. So I mean, that's really at the heart of what I'm doing with folks in the narrative budget courses is trying to get us to really begin to think that, we want to move from the place where giving is about making the church budget and really where what we focus on is what is our church's mission. Another great name in the United Methodist Church is Lovett Weems. And
Yeah,
Lovett and Ann Michael from Lewis Center put together a great book called I think it's called Stewardship, Abundance, and Generosity. And it's available to get it. And the best part out of that is he makes the point, and I think this will change churches. If you can get your leaders to adopt this. And he says his two principles. He says you never talk about the church's money without talking about its mission.
yeah, awesome.
Second one is you never talk about your people's money without talking about their discipleship.
Ah,
And if we could get ourselves to actually do that in our finance meetings, in our council meetings, in what we say from the pulpit in our announcements, if we could connect that, make that connection all the time. And so, yeah, it's a great question to say about that. How do we want to keep that mission and the narrative budgets that people are developing? Asking them first thing is, well, look at what your mission statement is, and
yeah,
say, does your mission statement reflect all the places where money's going? The different buckets that you might use because we use
great.
4 or 5 buckets to put it into worship, mission, Christian formation, whatever those might be. And I said, look at your mission statement. And some of the best narrative budgets, because I ask them to share with me when they've done their narrative budgets, some of the best ones I've gotten have been where they actually have picked apart their mission statement or their vision statement and said, here are our 4 buckets. Our bucket is to love, serve, and to educate or to mature or whatever. Nurture, I think, is the third one they get a lot of, and so they've breaking their divided their whole budget down that way. The other thing the narrative budget does is it speaks against the idea that we have in our mind sometimes that there are mission dollars that the church has and there are operational dollars. And what I try to say in the narrative budget is there is no mission without the operational dollars.
Yeah,
We don't do our mission without having insurance, without having staff, and without, these things don't happen without, paying the light bill and doing all that stuff. And so when we do the narrative budget and we keep a line item budget because there's going to be people, there's going to be people in your church who are going to want to look at the numbers people. They're going to want to look at
right.
line item budget. You don't get rid of that. You build your narrative budget off of that. But in the narrative budget, we say, that we divide our electricity up among all these different areas of ministry. We divide our insurance payments up among all these, and we do the same with salaries for clergy and non-clergy staff as well. So, yeah. So I think that's a big part of what we need to be making that shift, and again, keeping our eyes open for the places where we're making an impact.
That's
And
great.
it's not, I mentioned Africa University. Africa University is a great example of what we do with our connectional giving. I use it, overuse it probably all the time to say, 30 years ago this didn't exist, and now 10,000 students have been graduated and they're changing the face of Africa. That's a great impact story, but the local impact stories are smaller. Like this young man who got baptized a couple of weeks ago at my church. That's our impact story. We don't get a lot of, we're still kind of in membership decline, but hey, we won one here,
Right.
And those are the stories that are close to people and they want to see. Tell them what your youth group is doing. Tell them, all those kind of things. I've talked to churches have these backpack programs, and I said, can you imagine what that's like for when that kid gets home and that family on that weekend? And it's like a gift from God. So, tell those stories.
Yeah, the power of story. Your story matters. And, we've been trying to say that with SBC 21, how we want to tell the impact stories, how we brought the Ken Sloane on for a webinar, and we say it was free for them. But this one webinar can change the trajectory of your church, transform your community, and change your city. So it's something about impact stories. And Ken, you said something as we get ready to close. And man, I never thought about this. Accepting Jesus is a call to discipleship. The call to discipleship and stewardship is directly connected to discipleship. And I was thinking about that word stewardship has such a negative connotation, but generosity and how generosity is tied into discipleship. So thank you for that, man. And I've been taking copious notes for SBC 21, and this is going to really help us. And one last thing you said, and the power of thank you.
Yeah.
Now, Ken, when you were in the local church, why, as pastors, why don't we say thank you enough? I mean, this, I tell you, I own that. You know, I
Yeah.
didn't say thank you enough.
Yeah. Yeah, I really do wish I had, I had been more conscious of that
Yeah.
as the new church start. But, um, again, a couple of places where this has really been driven home to me, is people have said, that, and I have an article, I think the article I linked there to, there's an organization in Nashville called Thistle Farms, and they help, it's for women who are coming out of incarceration for a number of different reasons and helping them. They've got a little place there to get people work, a little place. They've got a pretty good sized business now, doing candles and things like that, and women work in this program and kind of get themselves back on their feet. And it's a wonderful program, and we volunteered there from the agency, a couple times to help out a little bit. But I started giving them, like $10 a month. I just thought it's a good thing. In addition to my church giving, I can do this too. And every quarter they send me a letter, and this is really amazing to me. Is they send me a letter. They tell the story of one woman that has been impacted by their program. They have her picture in there. They usually have a quote or something where she talks about what it's meant to them.
Wow.
And they thank me profusely.
Yeah.
Now, what's different about their letters is they have never asked me to give more money.
They just say
they think that that's enough to tell the story, and it is enough. And so finally, I got to the point. I say, "Gosh, $10 is not enough. I got to up that. I got to increase it." And it's I'm on that ongoing monthly deduction kind of thing. But it's just, I give to, my brother died of Parkinson's, so I give to Parkinson's. Every mail I get from Parkinson's is give more, give more, give more. But, their technique was, and so I wrote a little story about this on the web, and I give samples of these letters so people can see them. You don't have to hound people for money if you just tell them what the impact they're making
right.
and make that story clear.
So
So
Ken,
absolutely.
yeah, the power of impact stories, and thank you. So one last thing, we're going over time, but someone said in the chat, they need information on generating financial statements for the church, the quarterly statements, and their email addresses in the chat. So if you can get that email address, send them something on that, that'd be greatly appreciated.
I will do that. I will do that.
So thank you, Carol Gibson, for your question. Thank you all for attending here, and want you all to know that this has really been a blessing to me. And I just want to say in closing, thank you. Thank you, Ken. Thank you all for being a part of what SBC 21 is doing. And know that your time, your energy that you give to us, it helps us to be better. And remember this, and I believe it's so important, that when the Black church is strengthened, the entire denomination is stronger. And remember your story and your impact, it matters. So as we get ready to go, I want to say thank you, Ken. Please go to our website, like our website, go to our YouTube channel, go to we have a new Instagram page. Go to that and like that page, and know that everything we do, it'll be online. This will be online. This webinar will be online on YouTube on Tuesday. Check it out on Tuesday. Share it with your leadership team. Share it with your friends, your co-workers, on how you can end your year strong with your stewardship of generosity. So once again, thank you all, Ken. Have a great day, my friend. And everybody, whatever you do, make sure you know that your giving matters. And your giving not only matters, but it makes a big difference in the kingdom of God. May God bless you, and may God keep you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Just one announcement. We just want to remind people to check out the link in the chat for poll chaplains. In case your state is part of that. SBC 21 is a partner with Turnout Sunday. Turnout Sunday is an organization that is organizing poll chaplains. So click the link. You can sign up for an orientation and find out more information. Great. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Candy. Have a great day.